Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It's for me a privilege to open this session, Expertise for the Future. I'm Piersandro Cocconcelli. I'm from the Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore here in Milan and other campus in Italy. And I've been working for EFSA over the last 12 years as scientific expert. I'm a food microbiologist and a molecular biologist. But today we are here to focus on how to train and educate the new expert on food safety. It's a key topic. It's the first ingredient for shaping the future of safety assessment and food safety assessment, as the Executive Director Bernard Hull has highlighted yesterday afternoon in his opening speech. It's a key question. How we can train people that should be able to manage with the complex system of assess the safety of the food, entire food chain, from farm to fork, from the primary production up to the consumption. It's a very hot topic, and probably we need this interaction between the regulatory authorities and university, another topic that has been highlighted in the discussion of yesterday afternoon in the opening session. This morning we have a group of colleagues from university, from research center, from institution, with experience in training and education in food safety. The organization of the morning is quite simple, but we have, I forgot to say, but he will introduce himself, that I'm co-chairing with Dominique Gombert from France this session. The structure will be a keynote lecture. Then we have few times for 5 minutes, 10 minutes for questions. Then we have all the other speakers, 15 minutes of presentation, 5 minutes for the questions that can arrive from the audience or from the streaming, web streaming via Twitters. And at the end, we have 30 minutes for a panel discussion. There will be a coffee break at 10:45, and I've been asked by organizer to be strict in respecting the time scheduled. Just to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I will be very short because I think that now we have to jump into the speech. I'm Dominique Gombert. I'm director in ANSES, the French National Agency for Health and Safety, and I'm in charge of the department dealing with risk assessment. So I'm quite interested by all the discussions that we will have this morning, obviously.
So we will start with the first speaker, the keynote speaker. It's a pleasure for us to have here Gráinne Conole. I hope that my pronunciation is correct. She's professor and chair in education at the University of Bath, and she's an expert how can be introduced innovation in learning, in university learning, and in particular related to e-learning. So thank you very much to be here.
It's lovely to be here. It's nice to be back in Milan. I'm slightly limping because I ruptured my Achilles tendon back in July when I was dancing at a concert, and I was wearing a great big moon boot for ages, so I'm just getting back to normal now. So I'm going to share with you some of the research I've been doing and others have been doing, particularly across Europe, for looking at ways in which we can improve the way we teach people and make more innovative use, in particular, of digital technologies. So I'm going to talk about the importance of e-learning, why it's such an important topic now for both formal education in universities, but also in training as well. And then I'm going to look at different facets of e-learning, in particular the notion of more open practices. And I understand we've got a Twitter stream going, for example. That's very common now as a back channel at conferences. The benefits of mobile learning, and I can see an iPad there. I never go anywhere without my iPad mini. Social media, digital identity, and distributed cognition. So I wanted to start with this short video from Pearson's, who are now getting into the educational space, with a vision for the future of education in 2020.
We'll discuss a little later in the course. Now, the baboon's heart was just about the size of a walnut.
Simone, I thought you might want to know that we're passing the Loma Linda Medical Center in a few blocks, site of the very first animal-human heart transplant in the U.S. I see they give tours. Would you like to schedule one?
Not today. How about on Saturday? Then I could bring the kids with me.
The first one starts at 10 a.m. on Saturday. It looks like you're all available at that time. I'll put it on your calendars.
Simone is taking a massive online course right now as a part of her nursing studies, and a number of technologies just came into play. Geolocation and instant notifications allowed her computer assistant to know we had passed in front of a significant landmark in the study of the human heart. At the same time, the heads-up display on the inside lenses of her glasses allowed her to see an augmented reality view of the Loma Linda Medical Center. This was a great teachable moment.
Help! I need help down here! Hurry! I don't know what's happening. I just found him laying here. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Galileo, I need an analysis of this plant.
Aconite, also known as wolfsbane or the queen of poisons, contains
Stop, Galileo! Notify ER of possible toxic shock. Also bring up poison protocol.
Okay, you lost him. You can stop.
Okay, Simone, what did you miss here?
I'm not sure.
Can anyone help out here?
I hope you'll agree that kind of gives you a real kind of view into the kind of vision for the future. And there are a whole series of these videos on the Pearson website which are worth looking at. So I wanted to give you a flavour of some of the key technologies which I think have been important over the last 30 years ago, or so. I start with the emergence of tools to create rich multimedia in the 80s, of course the emergence of the web in 93, and none of us could have predicted how the web would transform what we do. And in fact, we expect to be able to be online all the time. I was trying to upload a file yesterday in the hotel across the road, and it took me absolutely hours. It was incredibly frustrating. The notion of learning objects, the idea is that we don't need to create 100 economics courses. We can just create one together and then share and adapt that. The concept of learning management systems to enable us to put materials online. The first generation of mobile devices, rather laughable in comparison to what we have nowadays. The concept of learning design, ways in which we can help educators and trainers make more effective designed activities, and I'll come back to that later in the talk. The notion of gaming technologies and how we can use those to motivate learners. Open educational resources, the idea of creating free resources. Social and participatory media. Virtual worlds. E-books and smart devices. Massive open online courses. I don't know in your area if you've got lots of MOOCs, but certainly in other areas they've expanded rapidly since 2008. And the concept of learning analytics, the fact that we can mine the information about students and find out what students are doing and then target them more effectively. So despite the potential of technologies, there are lots of barriers to adoption. People lack the necessary digital literacy skills to make effective use of technologies. There's no reward, certainly in universities, for teaching. Research is very much privileged over teaching. There's competition from other providers. As I said, people like Pearson's are now getting into the educational space. It's difficult to scale innovation, and there's issues around democratization. So why is e-learning important? I think it's important for two reasons. Firstly, in terms of the ways technologies can enable us to help learners interact with rich multimedia, communicate and collaborate, the ways in which they can develop their digital literacy skills, the ways in which we can promote different pedagogical approaches, promote reflection, collaboration, communication, the ways in which technologies can foster creativity and innovation. I certainly find social media has absolutely transformed the way I do things. I use things like Twitter and Facebook extensively to support my daily practice. And the ways in which we can connect students beyond the formal course, and the ways in which, as we've got at this conference, we can have live streaming and bring others in from the virtual space. But it's also important in that we're preparing students for an uncertain future. I don't know how many of you plan to be in the career you're in, but certainly I've changed. My PhD was in chemistry. I don't know how I got into e-learning. How many of you have changed careers more than once? Not as many as I thought. Quite often people have changed now 2 or 3 times. But in fact, we're training students for a future in which there are jobs that don't even exist today. Employers increasingly expect students to be digitally literate, and increasingly technology is important generally in all aspects of our lives. So just to point you to a couple of reports that give an indication of where we're going, the New Media Horizon reports are excellent in terms of indicating the technologies which are going to have an impact in 1, 3, and 5 years' time. They talk about the importance of blended learning. How do we make effective use of spaces like this and enable them to be technology enhanced? It's always the case, isn't it, now with conferences? We rush in and we try and find the nearest plug socket. There are never enough in the spaces. The growth of open educational resources, and then the increasing, we're seeing increasing collaboration across institutions, across sectors. So it's worth looking at those reports. They have a number of them for different sectors and different regions of the world. The Open University in the UK provides a really useful annual report indicating the 10 technologies they think are going to be important. They haven't done one yet for 2015, but 2014 they list the following, emphasizing the social aspects of massive online courses, the link between learning design and learning analytics, the notion of the flipped classroom, the fact that we can get students to look at materials in advance of a face-to-face activity, bring your own devices. Increasingly, students have smartphones and tablets, and the focus on learning to learn, the notion of metacognition as important. They talk about increasingly dynamic assessment modes, events-based learning, learning through storytelling, focusing on threshold concepts. These are very difficult concepts in an area, and how technologies can enable a better understanding of those, and the notion of bricolage, or learning through play. So some of the benefits of technologies, we can work now across devices. I've been learning Spanish in recent years, and I have a full Spanish dictionary, and it's on my iPad, it's on my iPhone, it's on my Mac, it's across all devices. The benefits of mobile devices, the fact that we can personalize our learning environments. It's a nice exercise to do, to look at and reflect the technologies you use on a daily basis and why you use those and why you don't use other technologies. The notion of open, we see increasingly free resources and indeed expertise in whole courses. These devices are very much intuitive now. We expect them to be easy to use. And technologies are very much interactive nowadays and pretty much robust. But there are disadvantages. I don't know how many of you have iPhones, but I have an iPhone 5. I probably have to charge it 2 or 3 times a day. It's very frustrating. There are issues around privacy. There are still issues about costs. The training that's needed and required to make effective use of technologies, they can be very time-consuming. Sometimes there can be issues, as I found yesterday, in terms of connectivity. And there can be issues around quality. So there are always benefits and disadvantages of these technologies. And so there are two sides to the coin in terms of technologies. They can enhance, they can augment, they can supplement, they can replace, they can enrich, they can expand, they can empower. But they can also, if used badly, detract, lessen, confuse, overwhelm, infringe, be time-consuming, and be addictive. So I wanted to focus now on 5 facets of digital technologies: openness, mobile learning, social media, distributed cognition, and digital identity. So openness, in terms of open practices in using technologies, has become increasingly important in recent years. I blog on a regular basis, and it's absolutely transformed the way I work as a teacher and researcher. I recently had a book published by Springer, and I said in the application I was going to live blog chapters as I went. I did. I got lots of feedback from people, which massively improves the quality of the final book. We've seen the proliferation of open educational resources and massive open online courses. And we're increasingly seeing free resources and expertise, webinars, blogs, open repositories, journals, and social media. Indeed, we expect to be able to find materials freely available online. So it's great in terms of openness enables us to be much more transparent, get a far greater reach. It encourages inclusion. It is challenging, which I think is good, existing educational business models, and we're seeing a disaggregation of education. Learners are no longer necessarily paying for full formal courses. They may pay for resources, they may pay for expertise, they may pay for accreditation. But being open lays yourself bare, and there can be issues around that. And there are issues in terms of surveillance and misuse of data. A colleague of mine has had his identity stolen online, and people are posing as him, and he can't track this down. It's a real issue. I'll come back to some of the disadvantages of that later. And there can be issues in terms of the quality of what's online and issues around accreditation. So the second topic I wanted to talk about was the notion of learning design. So yes, there are great ways in which technologies can foster interaction, communication, and collaboration, and there are lots of free resources. But the reality is they're not being fully exploited, and we're seeing lots of examples of bad pedagogy. And teachers and educators, when you ask them, say they don't have the time to make effective use of technologies, and they don't have the skills. And this mirrors a recent report by the Association of Learning Technologies at the end of last year. And they list these as some of the key issues: lack of resources to enable educators and trainers to be released to make effective use of technologies, often too much of a focus on those who are champions in innovation, lack of credit and recognition, and so it goes on. So if you're interested in delving into more of the barriers, that report is worth looking at. Because of this, a number of us have been focusing on the notion of learning design in recent years as a way to help educators and trainers make more informed design decisions that are pedagogically effective and make appropriate use of digital technologies. So what is learning design? It's 3 things. It's about providing teachers and educators and trainers with the guidance and support they need in their design practice. It's about visualizing the design process so that it can be articulated and shared with others. And it's about sharing. So guidance, visualization, and sharing. So as I said, it's about helping teachers make more effective design decisions that are pedagogically based and make appropriate use of digital technologies. So through work I did at the Open University UK, and then at Leicester, and now at Bar Spa, we came up with a conceptual framework for learning design called the 7 C's of learning design. If you're interested in this, all of the resources are available from that link at the bottom. So this first C is about conceptualization. It's about creating a vision for the learning that you're creating. And then there are a series of C's to do with creating activities in terms of creating materials or reusing existing materials, ways in which we can foster communication and collaboration. And the Consider C is about reflection and how we evidence how the learners have achieved the learning outcomes. The combined C is about stepping back and looking at the design from different perspectives. And then consolidate is about implementing the design in a real learning context and evaluating how effective it is. So each of those C's has associated with it a whole set of resources and activities. And I'm just going to share a few with you. The course features activity is one of the conceptualization activities. People work in teams, they get a pack of cards, and the cards relate to these 6 aspects. The pedagogical approaches that might be used in the learning activity, the principles associated with it, what forms of guidance and support are provided, the nature of the content and activities that the learners will engage with, the ways in which reflection and demonstration of evidence are achieved, and the ways in which communication and collaboration are fostered. The second is the course views activity. This goes into more detail, and the last of those 4, guidance and support, content and experience, reflection and demonstration, collaboration and communication. You can see in this particular example, it's heavy in terms of peer-to-peer support, very much active and activity-based. It's based on reflection and collection of evidence in a portfolio, and it's very much about a professional community. If you're interested in more work on learning design, I've been part of a team which is led by James DL in Australia, where we came up with this document called the Larnaca Declaration on Learning Design. And in this, we articulate what we mean by learning design and the nature of it. And we go into quite a lot of details. And this is, of course, available online. So do have a look at that if you're interested. I'm very happy, by the way, to leave my slides, and people can take copies if they want to. In terms of accrediting non-formal learning, I've been involved in 2 projects recently, VM Pass and Open Cred, because many learners now want to get recognition for their informal learning and their non-formal learning. And this is a challenge. And so in VM Pass, we were looking at ways in which we could accredit non-formal learning. We came up with a learning passport for accreditation, which had information from the person providing the open educational resources, information about the learner, and information about the asserting or assessing institution. And learners can take this learning passport and use it in different contexts. MOOCs, as I said, have emerged in recent years. The New York Times declared that 2012 was the year of the MOOCs, and they're very much challenging formal education, which I think is good. And we're starting to see new business models arise as a result. There's a very good series of blogs on the FQuEL, the European Foundation for Equality in E-Learning, on MOOCs, which goes into quite a lot of detail. And MOOCs have been classified as C MOOCs, which are what are called connectivist MOOCs. They're very much about peer support and connection and learning through others and learning through social media. And then we've seen people like edX and Coursera and Udacity emerge in recent years. And they're much more linear, primarily around text and video with maybe some multiple choice questions. And they've been labelled XMOOCs. They're much more didactic in nature. I think this classification is too limiting and narrow to cover the kind of nuances of the kind of MOOCs we're seeing today. And so recently I came up with this taxonomy of MOOCs, which has 12 dimensions. 3 to do with the context of the MOOC, how open it is, how massive, how diverse the learners are or participants are. And then 9 to do with the nature of learning, how multimedia is used, how communication, collaboration and reflection are fostered, the nature of the learning pathway, if there is one, what kind of quality assurance mechanisms are in place, are there any forms for certification, does the offering link into formal learning, and how autonomous are the learners. And there's a link on my blog there which goes into that in more detail. So I think this gives us a richer description of the kind of range of MOOCs we're seeing today. Some other projects I've been involved with recently related to open education resources and MOOCs. Emma is a platform which is delivering a whole load of MOOCs. We're just about to launch 2 on 21st learning technologies and learning design. That will be starting in November. eMundus has been looking at MOOCs in more details, and the one on the right is developing a MOOC to design more effective MOOCs. That's my building, by the way. I've got to be on one of the most beautiful campuses in the UK in Bath Spa, so if you're ever in that part of the world, do come and see me. Mobile learning, second topic. We're seeing lots of these now, great size, much more effective battery on the whole, and a range of excellent apps, general and specific for particular topics. We can learn anywhere, anytime. We can learn across devices and contexts. We tend to have ubiquitous connectivity, but there's no downtime. It means we're online 24/7, and people expect us to be online 24/7. And we're increasingly putting information in the cloud, and we don't really know what's happening to that information. This is a picture of an MSc student at Leicester University doing a criminology course. The course, all the students are provided with iPads as part of their registration, and we did an evaluation, and it was incredibly positive. The students absolutely loved these devices. So this is a guy having a coffee break, just doing 10 minutes of bite-sized learning on his course. So some of the benefits, this is my colleague Therese Bird has listed that they're small, they're compact, they're portable, they're easy to read. I certainly find I can read very easily on my iPad Air. There's often additional facilities like being able to bookmark and highlight, and on the whole, long battery life apart from the iPhone 5. So the third topic is social media. We've seen a shift from a passive web to one that's much more dynamic and interactive and open. And there's now a range of really fantastic tools. There's a really lovely video called Social Media Revolution. If you Google it, it kind of gives you statistics of the impact of social media, and it's really quite profound. And we've got a range of fantastic tools to be able to communicate and collaborate. And we really are now part of a global community of peers. Bath Spa is my 6th institution, but really I don't feel any identity to any one university because I really feel very much part of a global community of peers through things like Twitter, through Skype, through Facebook. So rich ways in which we can communicate and being part of this global community. We've got access to practically anything that we want online now, and we can rapidly distribute information. If I write a closed journal article, I'm lucky maybe if 5 people read it. If I write a blog post and tweet it, it immediately goes to a network of over 8,000 people. And that's really, really quite profound. The scale is really absolutely phenomenal. There's a lack of privacy, however. It means we're online all the time. We're visible. People know I'm here, so they know my house in Northamptonshire is empty. Well, it's not, because my daughter's there. But you can be traced where you are online. We see lots of examples of cyberbullying and trolling. I don't know how many of you have had bad experiences on Facebook, but I've had some really weird experiences, like people contacting me and asking to be friends. I look at their profile, there's absolutely no information on them, or I connect with somebody and suddenly they're badgering me and texting me and texting me. So you do have to be quite careful. And as I said before, they can be very time-consuming and addictive. People say to me, why do you use Twitter? How do you find time? I use it because it's incredibly valuable for my practice, so I make time for it. So this is my network. Literally, that's my desk, so no paper. What are the things I use on a daily basis? I use Facebook all the time, both for professional things and for personal. So I put a note this morning and said, I'm just about to do a talk this morning, and my cousin in Ireland came back and said, good luck, hope it's good, and somebody else will probably come back and say, where's the link to the live stream, etc. I use EndNote for referencing. Pearl Trees is a fantastic tool for curating resources on the iPad. E for Innovation, my blog, I've been blogging since about 2007. I find it a great way of working up ideas, reflecting on things, reflecting on my teaching, conferences I've attended. And it's really motivating when people come back and say, oh, I really like what you're saying there. I'm not so sure about that. Or have a look at this related research. SlideShare for sharing presentations and documents. Dropbox, great tool for being able to upload things. Skype, LinkedIn I'm on, but I don't use extensively, and Twitter. And interestingly, when I first did this, I forgot to put Gmail. And anyone who knows me knows that the best way to get me is through Twitter or Facebook. I'm really terrible with email for some reason. So it's worth doing that exercise yourself and seeing what's your network and reflecting on why do you have that combination of tools. But there is a darker side to this, and I'll just show you a quick clip. This is a film that I saw recently called Unfriended. And it's all shown through the interface of Skype, which is really quite powerful.
Post it. I need another drink.
Dude, look.
Laura.
Which seats are better, balcony or orchestra?
Hey, Mitch, who's your buddy?
Who is that?
I just tried to hang up on him.
Can we get rid of this person?
I don't know.
Was this here the whole time?
It's just probably a glitch.
Well, the glitch just typed.
Who is doing this? This is Laura's account.
Who would hack into a dead girl's account?
Maybe it's Laura. All right, everyone, hands up right now. Who's doing this?
It's a really, really good film. I don't normally like horror stories, but it was excellent. And the fact it came through the Skype interface made it even more plausible somehow. So I'm nearly towards the end. Just a couple of more things to share with you. I think it's really interesting to think about your digital identity and how you portray yourself online and how you interact and communicate with others. I guess because of the nature of my role, I'm very open, I share everything, I'm online a lot, and it's partly because I want to experience what that's like. And there are a number of facets to your digital identity in terms of reputation, impact, influence, productivity, and openness. I'm probably much better known through being online, through Facebook and Twitter, through my blog, than I am through the journal articles I write. And I think there's a complex interaction between your identity, how you interact, and your presence online, and the three interact together. Mark Childs has done some nice work in this area. He breaks presence down into mediated presence, social presence, co-presence, and self-presence. So if you're interested, it's worth having a look at his blog site to get into more details. He's particularly interested in presence in virtual worlds. So the good and the bad, it can be an extension of yourself. I'm here physically, but somebody's probably replying to a post on Facebook or replying to a tweet I've done or reading a blog post. So we're fragmented across these spaces. We can extend our reach far, far more through these environments, and we can exploit the medium. But it is laying yourself very much bare. I've had some nasty experiences, and I'm going to share one with you in a second. And you can get cyber stalking and identity theft. So, just to share with you a bad experience, and this is related to a project that two Canadians are doing at the moment, looking at disclosure, care, and vulnerability. They interviewed me in terms of my experience, and the experience I'm going to share with you now is on my blog if you're interested in looking at it online. So, online environments are great. It's fantastic. I'm a great fan. But there is a darker side. I recently a few years ago, I did online dating. I'm ashamed to admit, and I met this very handsome chap. Lots of interactions. We arranged to meet at an art gallery in London. A couple of days before, he said, "Oh, I've got to go to Japan on business." So I thought, fair enough. Sent me lots of pictures of him in Japan. You can see this Japan in the background. Then he crashed his hire car, and he lost his wallet, and the story got more complicated. And by now, I was getting very, very suspicious. So eventually, I got an email from him saying, "I managed to get some money, but I still need £3,000. Can you help?" So I sent it, obviously, you know. And apparently this is really common. There's a whole load, it'll be a whole gang of people. And if they're working 30, vulnerable women and one gives them the money, they're quids in. So I blogged about it. I was a bit nervous. I thought, is this professional suicide? But lots of people came back and said, thank you so much for blogging about this. This is a really common problem. People need to know about this. It's really important that people like you are prepared to be open about this. So there is a darker side that you need to be aware of. So the final topic, and there's a link here to an excellent video called Limitless, really good film, but I won't show it in the interest of time. The final topic I want to talk about is the notion of distributed cognition. And there's a notion of person plus. So I am me, but I'm also extended in my digital network and information. I don't have information all at hand. I know where I can find it on my email or in my blog or on Facebook or what have you. So we're distributed. It's kind of the notion of what Perkins calls persons plus, or the notion of distributed cognition. There's been a joke going around Facebook recently that we no longer know telephone numbers because we don't need to. We've just got them all on our mobile devices. And we can exploit the vast amount of information that's available online. There are fantastic tools to curate, manage, and filter, and it very much is augmenting and enhancing what we do. But the issue is whether we can use this vast amount of information and resources effectively. Do we have the necessary digital literacy skills? And it's very easy to get lost and confused. And there's a loss of permanency. Things are constantly changing in the online environment. And there is an issue of whether machines will take over and whether we're becoming over-dependent. And I'll finish on that in a second. Excellent video here by Stephen Hawkins, who's recently been arguing that artificial intelligence is a real problem and could make mankind extinct. It's worth looking at. It kind of sends shivers down your spine. So I wanted to finish with this slide from a French philosopher. He argues that technologies cannot exist without accidents. And therefore, the question is when, not if, technologies will fail. So are we heading towards a doomsday scenario where technologies fail and everything stops? If you're interested in what I've been talking about, I've had a book out by Springer on the learning design work. I'm currently very late with a practical guide to learning design, which is a kind of 101 ways in which you can foster communication, collaboration, reflection. I was going to call it 50 Shades of Learning Design to increase sales, but then I thought maybe not. Usually I put my slides on the slide share. That's my email. E for Innovation is my blog, and I'm at Conole on Twitter. Thank you very much for listening.
So thank you very much, Professor, for your introduction. I think that we have some time for some small question, 10 minutes of discussion. I would maybe have the first question, if you want. Would you have, by the way, any figures about the development of e-learning, number of students involved, increase, and so on and so on? Is it easy to have some figure about that?
I mean, there's lots of research being done. I mean, one of the key questions that was asked when technology started to be used was, is e-learning better than face-to-face? Actually, that's the wrong question, because they're two completely different things. It's more about recognizing that face-to-face, there's something special. There's a reason we're here together. There's something about being co-present, about seeing people nod or fall asleep, about the coffee break interactions. And although people online will be getting lots out of this, I'm sure, it's not the same as being physically here. But the online offers you different components. You can stop, you can pause, you can go and have a cup of coffee, you can come back. So it's about complementing the two. And there's been a lot of research done in Australia in particular, look at designing physical spaces to be more technologically enabled. So rather than having tiered lecture theatres, having spaces where you can shift things around and have students working in little collaborative groups, ensuring there are enough plug sockets and good Wi-Fi to enable students to bring their own devices. So there's lots of research in terms of what are the benefits of digital technologies, but also now linking that to the physical space. And I think in particular in your area, in terms of training needs, there are quite different things than will be in a formal university degree, for example.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any question? Yes, one on the front.
Thank you very, very much for this interesting and inspiring presentation. Arnold Bosman from ECDC. What we notice is that there is also an increasing amount of virtual networks, virtual closed networks for professional information exchange. We know the RAS-FF for food assessment. We have the EWRS. We have EPISIS in ECDC. And most of these communities are extremely efficient in exchanging sensitive information. But yesterday also in the plenary, we learned about the unknown unknowns. And we've learned that if we do not share our risk assessments very broadly, then maybe people who need to know do not know. So what I'm interested in is where we draw the lessons from our practical risk assessment that we know that we need to share, and what platforms do we have to share that in a broader group without immediately putting it on a blog, which also has a lot of the dark sides that you explained.
Good question. And I think which networks you use will depend on your profession, the nature of communities and how you work. So for me, as I said, Twitter and Facebook are key. So I'm on Facebook with lots of students, for example. And it's been a real leveler because whereas in the past a PhD student would never dream of emailing me, they're on Facebook, they see I'm online, and they'll send me a cheeky little text and say, these are my research questions, what do you think? Or have you got any references in this? So they feel much more connected because they see pictures of my cats and my Sunday roast alongside the professional thing. So for me, those networks work. LinkedIn doesn't work for me for some reason, but I understand it's very good for those who are starting their career, trying to get jobs, etc., or for consultants. So I think which networks you use really depends on your community. And obviously I don't know your community well enough to say which are the best one. But I think it is worth reflecting, both individually and as a community, on what you should be putting out, who's it going to, how's it being used, particularly given the sensitivity of the nature of your area. So when I talk to doctors, for example, they don't go near social media for very obvious reasons.
We have another, yes. We have another question there.
Good morning. Hello. I'm Dr. Bandini from USDA Food Safety Inspection Service, United States. You have spoke about the use of Facebook, and you have spoke about the two ways of using it as a professional and as a private individual. In our profession, it's very important to separate the two. How do you do that exactly? What are your recommendations? Can you expand that?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I think it does depend on the nature of your work. I mean, my personal and professional identity are very much intertwined, and I think it's because, you know, I'm a teacher, I'm a researcher, so my friends and my colleagues are intertwined, so it's not an issue for me. I know my boss, for example, the Dean of Education, she has two different identities, her personal one and her professional one, so she's separated. So people do choose to separate them. How many of you like Facebook? Lady here, why do you like Facebook?
Somehow I feel I wouldn't mess it up with my personal life, and I wouldn't like to put my personal photos in front of my students because they can misunderstood it, for example. So, and the other thing is that I never know who knows and who sees it, so I don't even download pictures except for one or two pictures. I use just the messenger instead of posting. So, but sometimes I like it because I can ask for some help from the community, but not for professional purposes.
Fine. And how many of you hate Facebook? Anyone want to? Do you want to say the guy in red? I'm just picking on you because I can see the color.
Yeah, I think it's far too intrusive, and I think it's far too difficult to separate the private life from professional life. So I think it's better implemented in Google Circles, for example, where you can have a professional experience and the private one. Because like mentioned before, if you have a private one and you have all the private photos from the last party and then you go to a conference like that, that wouldn't go that well, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's interesting. My best friend works for Hewlett-Packard, and she's in privacy and security, and she wouldn't touch social media with a barge pole. And I have 2 daughters. The youngest one's very into social media. The elder one, who's at Bristol University, hates Facebook. And when she comes in the kitchen, I'm on Facebook, and I'll quickly switch to email and try and look terribly professorial. And she says, "Mummy, I know you're on Facebook. Get off, you're addicted. It's the work of the devil." So we all have very extreme views on these things, and we need to be aware of them and find our own comfort zone on what works for us. I think we're probably out of time, aren't we? Or
yes, I think the last question. And it's very interesting the example that you made, the difference between a scientific paper and a blog. And this is strictly related to the question of openness. But when we deal with food safety, there is a critical topic, that is the trustability of data.
Yeah.
We live in a world where most of the consumers takes as a sort of a Bible some blogs in which there is very few of scientific data. So how we can manage to, and how we can address this issue, having a high quality information, communication, training, education to students, but try to give also to the public audience a good message.
I mean, if you think about it, with scientific papers, they're quality assured because there's a peer review system. The criticism of blogs was that they're not reviewed, they're not as high quality. Actually, that's not true, because there is an informal peer critiquing and review, and there is a kind of known network within a particular community of who are the expert bloggers, who are the key people who are really good. So it's an extension. The other point which is interesting in terms of visibility is there's a guy in the States, he's a social anthropologist called Michael Wesch, and if I had time I'd show some of his lovely videos. He's done some really short 3-minute videos which really articulate the nature of the internet and the way in which students are changing. He put these out, they went completely viral. Millions and millions of people watched them. He went to his head of department when he was having his annual review, and he said, "Here's my top paper. It's been cited by 12 people. Here's a video I did which has been watched by 8 million people." And so, you know, there's a real issue. Now, I'm not saying that it's all about being open, because I think there is a continuum. I did recently write a formal, real book, and I needed to, because I felt I kind of, you know, if you like, I had ideas, I blogged about them, I worked them up, I wrote some papers, I did some conference presentations, and ultimately I did the book, which consolidates that area of work. So I think there is a spectrum, and I think that's appropriate. And again, which will be the quality assured channels in your community will depend on the nature of your community.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. We would like to thank you for your keynote lecture.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.